Hey, everybody. I'm Aaron Moog, and welcome to the Zero Sum podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I have on the pod Ed Bellis, who is a OG security guy, Chicago guy. So excited to have him on. He is the CEO of Empirical Security right now. He is a former CEO of Kenna, which had a very excellent exit to Cisco. He is an investor. He is an influencer in our market. I'm so happy to have him here. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's a little bit of an embarrassing intro.
Well, I figured I'd brag about you so you don't have to brag about yourself. I always love Midwestern security people. We're a little more of a rare breed, so it's great. So it's funny because when I had asked you to do the pod, I was not aware that you guys are in the middle of a raise, and so today's sort of the news, or the last couple of days, the news has been you raising, which I think is, in and of itself, great. Congratulations, first of all, that's amazing. But I also think it's an interesting timing because I think a lot of people are curious about what's going on in that part of the world. Obviously, you see these things, every day almost now, some huge raises, and it's like regular people are like feeling like this is quite a bit of money flowing around.
Yes.
But I'd love to sort of get your take on it. I guess my first question is, what are you going to do with $25 million? What are you going to do today that you can't do that you couldn't have done yesterday?
Yeah,
Let's
great.
sort of start there.
Yeah, great question. So we've been focusing a lot on the early days. We had raised previously a seed round,
Mhm.
and spent most of that seed round money went into hiring a lot of obviously R&D, data science, data engineering, acquiring a lot of data, given what we do, which is essentially building and training models in cybersecurity.
Mhm.
That requires obviously a lot of data, of which some of that was stuff that we procured through commercial means as well, right? So we spent a lot of that on that. We started to prop up our products, build out our models, train those,
Mhm.
started getting some early usage of those models. And then really this year is where it started to kick into high gear for us in terms of our sales pipeline and getting a lot of these customers in, using the product, buying the products, et cetera. And so needless to say, we have spent very little to nothing on the GTM side of the house today.
Right.
And we're going to have to change that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's a loud world. You got to
yeah,
cut
you'll
through it.
see
Yeah.
quite a bit of that coming from us as well. We'll continue to obviously invest in R&D, invest in the product. We still need to do a lot, especially on, we just kind of rebranded our global and local models. We're going to need to invest a lot in the automation of some of those custom models as well. So a lot to do.
That is a lot to do. And I'm curious just because we all sort of on the sidelines look at all this money and like all your problems are fixed, which is obviously not how it works.
No.
But I guess what's the one thing that people, because you've done this a few times now, that when you hear about the money, they assume the problem is fixed, but it's not.
No,
Like that,
yeah,
you're like, oh, I have money now, but this doesn't solve that problem.
I mean, this gets directly to, I often get the question of is, hey, you did, Kenna for a number of years. Now this is your next time around. What do you tell a new founder
Sure.
about, what you learned basically doing Kenna? And probably one of the number one things was it always takes more time, more money, or more resources than you actually think it takes to get to that next milestone. Almost always.
Yeah.
So
It's
it was great. It's a great round. We're super happy with. We brought in Bright Mind Partners, who we really like working with, and obviously we're happy with the terms, the amount of money, et cetera. But by all means, are we saying no? Oh, we're done here. Ship it. So we got a lot to do.
yeah, it's never it's it's funny also just, not knocking any particular person, but sometimes the newer founders or people who haven't had as much experience sort of celebrate on the fundraise like that's the finish line. You're like, no, no, no. All that means is you owe somebody a lot of money. Like that's all
Yeah.
that
Now
really
there's
means.
a lot more work ahead, right?
A lot more work. So it's interesting because from watching you all these years, going from a CISO to a founder with a lot of success to being inside of a mega org to now starting your own thing. I guess you're looking back at Kenna, right, and then what you did there from any perspective you want to take it, like doing it again, not necessarily what you tell other people, but like what mistake did you make that you're like, I don't want to do that again? Like that was a huge mistake. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I mean, there's there's a laundry list to be honest.
Sure.
But you know, some of the ones that when I think back of this stage of company and where I was at, it's like not only hiring too fast, but hiring the wrong people too early, that sort of thing. It's like
Mm,
you want to, you need the right people at the right stage at the right time. Right. And so you might look at someone and go, oh, wow, this person was a CRO at this company that went IPO. I would love to have them. But you're probably not ready for them, and they're not ready. They're not built for you, right?
right. Yeah.
You need to kind of hire the right people at the right time. Um, that's probably one. Obviously, I this is probably a no brainer, but needless to say, especially with some of the amount of funding and money that we see in the market today, it's you don't want to pour that money in prior to finding product market fit, and
Mm,
product market fit is probably a little bit more elusive at times than you think, or you might think you have it when you don't. um, there's other things like, you know, and we're doing this with empirical, right? Which is to say, right now, this is what we're focused on. We're a startup. We have X amount of people at this startup. We can't boil the ocean, so we're not going to
mhm,
solve all the things that we plan to. Hopefully, this is how we get really big, but we can't work on that right now. Right now, we got to
no.
be very focused on doing this one thing really well before expanding out.
So, it's interesting you're talking about like sort of the timing of it and things like that because there is a ton of companies, thousands of companies that were really hot before AI that are now sort of left behind.
Yeah.
That raised 10 million, 20 million, 30 million. I was at companies that raised up to 50. And it felt like a fortune. And now these guys are coming out of seed round with, and Lou did 100 million, Kevin did 170 million. Those guys, I think Glow announced today $180 million seed round. It's like, and I don't know how you get up a seed round. I've been on 2 years. So that's interesting. But like the stakes of that are enormous. And I don't like, as a go-to-market person, I'm like, I don't know where the money's coming from on the back end of like, you need a multi-billion-dollar exit to make that make sense. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a tough one. Um, part of the thesis of this pod is we're just talking about our industry, and I do want to get into hiring with you because the people are very interested in that. But like, as just kind of looking around your peers, do you think they're crazy or are they onto something? Like, what is all this money for?
To get to your point, like optionality matters as well, right? And the
Right.
more you raise, the less options that you have down the road, right? So as
Mhm.
you get to a point where you raise so much that it's IPO or bust because there's
Right.
no chance that any company is going to be able to afford you. But even before then, right? And we were mindful of that even at Kenna, is like we got to a point in the later stages, we ultimately got acquired by Cisco, but we had raised enough and certainly of enough size and enough revenue that there was only, a certain number of companies that could actually acquire us back then
Right.
as well. Um, so all that matters, and it should go into your calculus as to how you figure out what you're doing. So when you come out and raise a $180 million seed, needless to say, you've just taken a lot of that optionality out. So there's only so much that you can uh, ultimately end with, right? And if you're raising venture money, you're not essentially, you're not in this forever. There has to be a way for them to exit and take a return on their investment, right? So
Yeah.
whether that
Yeah.
be an IPO or an acquisition, but it's got to happen.
Do you do you feel like there's going to be a bigger role in sort of PE in cyber? Because like I
Right.
feel like that's almost has to happen because like you said, Palo and Cisco and Microsoft are only going to buy so many companies.
Yeah.
And I've found also they have an appetite for smaller acquisitions also too. Sometimes that just keeps them busy. So do you feel like there's going to be like more Tomo Bravos or whatever that are just going to do like roll ups? Do you think that's coming for our industry?
I think it's almost inevitable, right?
Yeah.
It's either that or or we're gonna
Or
flush
failure.
we're gonna flush a whole lot of companies out of the
Right.
industry
Right. Yeah.
one way or the other. But yeah, there's only there's still tons of dry powder on the VC side of the
Hmm.
house and things like that. But if you're continue to pump this amount of money in, and you have X number of options towards the end, you got to increase those options. And PE seems like an obvious area for that to happen. We're already starting to. I feel like we're seeing some of that now, right?
Yeah.
But I think that will probably continue as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been a out for the services guys, right?
Yeah, a very
Fishnet
popular
and
exit.
Trace3 and
Yeah,
like those guys have had exits with PE, not as much, hot cyber product companies.
yeah.
There's usually an exit, a Silence or whatever will exit to,
Well,
would they go BlackBerry? But like, at the end of the day, like there has to be a cash out to your point of VCs aren't going to bail you out.
yeah,
Um,
and
so
but to your point, like the services thing, that's important. That like I that's one of P's MOs. One that's not the only thing they do, but oftentimes you alluded to is they'll do roll ups, right? Or
mhm,
they'll acquire a bunch of different companies and kind of put them all together. And I feel like that's definitely easier and more natural on the services side of the house. It's harder to take a bunch of product companies and then integrate it all together and make it one cohesive thing. It's been
yeah,
done. Some companies do it well. A lot of companies don't do it very well.
right.
And so it could be hard for PE as well, but we'll see it. We'll see it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean the history of Cisco's and Microsoft's buying companies and then sort of EOLing them or
Yeah.
ending them, including some of the stuff I think you've been through, that's not an answer for 50 or 60 companies that need billion-dollar exits. Like that's fine. They'll do a couple of them. And I'm sure like Google will do well with Wiz or whatever, but like there's only so many of those on the table.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So that's the money guy's problem. Let's talk about real security people that do this for a living. So I guess like my read on Empirical, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of gearing up for what I think is an inevitable move to localized AI. Like I don't believe that two competitors are going to use the same AI engine. I have a hard time understanding that. And you being a Chicago guy, Kirkland came out, big ass law firm, was like Harvey's great. We love Harvey, and Harvey was one of the first AI winners, right? Like they
Yeah.
went really fast. AI was really applicable and legal. And the big law firm is like, yeah, that's cool, but I can't compete against Sidley in a
Yeah.
court case if we're using the same AI. So we're going to spend $500 million. And you know as well as I do, getting lawyers to spend money is hilarious. Like they're the cheapest people on the planet, right? Because they get to take home all the profits.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing that as sort of like a canary in the coal mine of like the large models of like if they're doing it and AI was kind of in legal first, it's only a matter of time before we
Yeah.
get into coding and the things that we all use AI for. Is that do you agree with that thesis? Is that kind of what you're seeing, or are you gearing up for that, or kind of where do you feel that's
I
going?
mean, obviously, we do. That's one of our theses is that every company is different, and
Hmm.
especially on the security side of things, it's more of I'm not doing this because I would use a global model to do this, but then I wouldn't have any distinct advantages from my competitors. That's not what you'll see in security. But
Hmm.
what you will do and see in security is look, my adversaries, the people who are trying to essentially attack me or do different things, harm to my organization could be very different than the people down the street or the people who are in a different industry, that sort of thing. Also, my environment, the controls that I have in place, what I've invested into my security dollars is totally different than all of the other companies, right? So
Okay.
being able to have this generic answer for every exposure out there it's not really equivalent in security, right? We believe that every organization has a lot of differences between them, and we've seen it, right? I saw it in my days at Kenna. I've seen it working in security for the previous 20 years, right? When I went from one organization to another in terms of working in security, they looked a lot different from the inside
Yeah.
in almost every way. So
So when you see that, right, the uniqueness of an enterprise, which you don't get big without getting weird, right? They all are a little weird of like the way they do business. And, everybody's like, oh, Target and Walmart are the same. No, they're not. They're completely different orgs. Bank of America and Chase couldn't be any more different, right? Like the way they run their business and obviously the way they run security. So is your kind of ideation is like, I'm going to support each of them in their own journeys. Is that kind of what your idea is
yeah,
or how
yeah,
you
absolutely.
manifest it?
Yeah, so to take a step back on what it is that we do, and we do train a global model, right? When basically says, okay, after all the activity and everything that we're monitoring on the internet and what we see, this is what we think that we're going to see on the internet again over the next 30 days, the next 60 days,
Mhm.
the next 90 days. And that's great. So if you, one of the things that we like to say is our global model will help you in terms of preventing you from becoming a target of opportunity, right? You've got
Okay.
this issue, an attacker knows how to exploit that issue, and they're looking for anybody who has it. Great. The global model will work for things like that. But then there's the people who are much more targeted attacks, right? I'm going after you because you are Bank of America. And in some cases, Bank of America and JPMC are similar, right?
Sure.
You might have some of the same adversaries that are just going after all of the banks, right?
Right.
But then there might be somebody who's targeting Bank of America because they don't like Bank of America, right? And
Mhm.
that's very different than JPMC in that case, right? So being able to understand all of that, understand all of the controls that are at Bank of America versus the controls that are at JPMC, et cetera. What's important there versus what's important at the other place. It's 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 just very different. So we take all of that the data coming from our global models, but then we'll retrain a custom model on a per organization basis where we're looking at all of the environmental data about your environment, about your company, about threat intel that you have about your business, and saying, okay, this is what you look like. And in this case, Bank of America looks very different than JPMC.
So it's so interesting because, going back historically in the Vuln world, right? There was so much pressure to do sort of risk rating of CVEs and EPSS and all these things around like how bad is this vuln,
Yeah.
in order for people to sort of react to it. And now it feels like, well, that actually wasn't the answer. It's make it super customizable, but it
Mhm.
sounds like maybe you're talking about the two being married, which is, I guess,
Sure.
from the outside, maybe not how I'm reading it, but that's very interesting. So, the the global part of it, right,
Mhm.
is, I mean, it's got to be terrifying, right? The people who spend their time, like I come from the world of like vuln testing and bug bounty and things like that, but like it's out of control now. Like, what are we gonna do with all these vulns? Like, it's out of like it's so unbearably. Like, I was this weekend with some buddies who do security at a big software security company. Like, we don't know, and all our bosses are saying is use AI to try to stay ahead like a day of what the bad guys are finding, right? And this is
Yeah.
a very targeted company, but
Yeah.
like, how are you like talking to people about that? Like, is this just the vuln apocalypse and like it's YOLO security time and who cares if there's vulns? Because it
Yeah.
doesn't seem possible to keep up with
Yeah.
AI.
I don't think it is certainly not possible at human scale, right?
Right. Okay.
Um, I think we are already starting to watch and see just even like as Project Glasswing and all of these different things come out and people are starting to analyze and find a lot more vulns, finding a lot of vulns that are in code that's very old that was not discovered before. We're seeing a big uptick in volume, but we've always seen a big uptick in volume. It's just exponential now.
Right. Right.
Um, right.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you asked me 3 years ago, can organizations keep up with the number of vulns they had? The answer was no then.
Hmm.
So it's only worse now in terms of that. We're also seeing, because I think a lot of these models generating exploit code and exploits, we're seeing a lot more of that too, right? So the ability to exploit these vulnerabilities has gone up as well. I will say so far, knock on wood, what we haven't yet seen is a really big uptake in exploitation activity, right?
Hmm.
People actually attempting to exploit these vulns somewhere. That's been pretty steady state. I mean, it goes up a little bit, but it's not nearly as voluminous in terms of what we're seeing on the vulns and the kind of exploit code side right now. So the way the simple analogy that I always go back to is the haystack has gotten a lot bigger, but the number of needles in that haystack are roughly about the same, right? So you just got to be able to pick those out.
So, and do you sort of attest or assign that because, I mean, just because there's AI doesn't mean the world's full of more criminals. Like, it
No,
doesn't necessarily
exactly.
how the world works,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And so, I look at it and I go, like, the same amount of actors roughly
Yeah.
exist. Like, the world hasn't caught up to AI in that sense yet. Like, some
Mhm.
15-year-old doesn't wake up in some other country, be like, I can hack Bank of America today because I know AI. It doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, nation states and things are their own concern, but like regular criminal pain in the ass hackers. And so, even the Hugging Face thing that happened in the last couple of days. It's like, no, it's just guys that do what we do screwing up. It wasn't actually a threat actor, right? So, sometimes we're our own worst enemies in this. But I do feel like the days of I build code, you find vuln, I fix vuln is got to go away. Like it's AI is just going to crush us with that. So how are you viewing the sort of closing of that loop? Like,
Mhm.
so I was talking to somebody the other day, and I'm like, if you're doing security testing and you're not delivering back AI config files for your AI to write better code, you're screwing up. Like
Yeah.
nobody needs a PDF report anymore of like a bunch of vulns. Are you seeing that, or are people not quite ready for that idea?
I'm seeing some of that, right?
Mhm.
We're on site at a customer last month, and it was interesting to see like they're they're using AI and pointing it towards their remediation efforts, but still like at a pinpoint level. They're not just saying AI go fix all of my vulns, right?
Right.
Uh, One of the things that us security people are always guilty of is we always think in terms of security risk, but we never think too much about operational risk. Well, all this
Right.
change going into production at once is a huge operational risk. And some organizations are like, you know what? I'd rather lose all confidentiality in this system than have it go down, right?
Right.
Depends on
Yep.
what the system is. Um, so, they're uh, using AI and pinpointing some very distinct areas, things that they think are really risky to them or really important to them, and they're going after it and remediating a bunch of vulns at once that way, right? And I think that is part of the future. And the other part is, patching isn't always the requirement here, right? Maybe
Right.
it's another control that actually is going to just eliminate a full class of vulnerabilities across an environment, right? Why not put that control in place and not have to worry nearly as much about writing all of these individual patches or fixing my code everywhere at once? If I can put in a few controls that's actually going to eliminate that whole class of vulnerabilities, or maybe it's upstream more root cause analysis, root cause in the sense that, hey, if we just centralize everything to use this one library to do X, which we've talked about in AppSec for years, right? I could actually eliminate a whole bunch of things too. So,
Yeah, I mean the era of AI basically being laugh is coming, right?
yeah,
It's too slow and expensive right now to do
yeah,
it. But like on the front end, being able to go like, yeah, I'm not going to change this code, but don't allow users to do this behavior. Just
mhm,
typing that into a prompt and having your AI load balancer basically take care of it. I mean, that's going to come eventually, right? Because like, we are still approaching a lot of these problems the way we approached it in the mid 2000s, which was like, I've got no control over inbound basically at all as security. So I've only got remediation. That's, we're going to have front loading of this at some point. Um, but that requires local models because you can't,
yeah,
it costs you $1 trillion to do it through Anthropic, right? Like, can you
totally.
imagine Amazon taking every web session and flowing it through Anthropic would cost them $1 trillion, right? And also would have very low value. So, I love the idea of sort of closing that loop in other ways, like you kind of mentioned, like other paths. And I also think there's just a massive opportunity to do better developer relations. I think like
Mhm.
even inside the companies that sort of get constantly thrashed for vulns, like some of the firewall companies, like you can close these loops. Like you can get developers better instructions and better prompting and better understanding. I don't see that a lot yet, but I feel like it's got to happen. So in that vein, I guess like the problems that you see like with these AI heavy dev companies, like do you like what does the future of that look like, I guess, to you? Like, is it how do you close these loops, or what are you seeing that you're like, oh, that's a dope idea, I'm going to do that? Because also at the end of the day, like, are all developers gone and it's just AI writing code? Like, so what do you think that where do you think that's headed?
Yeah, those are good questions for sure. In fact, I was thinking about the latter question, which is, we were talking to some folks over at Anthropic actually
Hmm.
about this, and they're like talking about how they don't hire junior devs anymore, and it's basically everything is done by the models, and they've got a few seniors that are out there and doing different things. And somebody asked the very relevant question: is what happens when those seniors time out? Right?
Right.
What if they
Where are we going?
retire? And where's your pipeline of?
Hmm.
And I think there's some firm belief there that actually the models will get good enough that it won't matter. I don't know about that. We'll see.
Yeah.
One thing I am noticing is everything with AI is faster and
Hmm.
more, right? And so we're also producing more code than ever, right? But we're also, I'm quite certain of this, producing more vulnerable code than
Hmm.
ever as well, right? So the attack surface, the footprint of all of this stuff, it just, and the old stuff never tends to go away. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Um, I don't know where this ends. Right now, it just feels like it's more and it's faster, right?
Right.
It's significantly faster. So I feel like we've moved away from any chance of this being a human scale problem.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Every time I hear some AI CEO say like, "Oh, anybody can build an app now," I get like a chill up my spine. I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's you as a security
And
guy,
they
that's not a
are.
good thing." Yeah,
Yeah.
that's terrifying. But like the I think to your point, I've heard the same arguments in AI SOC, right? Like we don't need level ones anymore. We're gonna AI that, and then I have the same questions like, okay, well, what happens when the guys who are the top of the food chain leave
Mhm.
and AI is not ready to take their jobs, which I don't think it will be really anytime soon. Like also you kind of have to, realize like it's not there's a lot of AI hatred, right? There's a lot of backlash against AI. A lot of people are very upset about it, emotional about it. Like, I don't know who's right or wrong, but like, there's a lot of emotion about it. But like, some of that's directed at CEOs, right? Which is kind of a new thing. Like, sort of it said this abstract idea. It's like it's your fault, Mister, Sam Altman, whoever.
Mhm.
But you're a CEO. You're dealing with this right every day. Hire, build, buy, all those sorts of things. Like, how are you thinking about it? Like, not necessarily like just what's the market. Like, how are you as a CEO thinking about it?
About like our own internal use of
Yeah,
AI?
like when do you know, how do you grow your own? Do you hire junior people anymore?
Mhm.
Like I've heard from even on this pod, I've heard from like we had Jason Loomis on, who's a really awesome CISO, and he's like,
Yeah.
I just am not hiring analysts anymore. Like I don't
Mhm.
need them. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but okay, but in 5 years, when all your people quit to go to Anthropic and make all this money, where are you going to get talent from? And then you're like, well, I'll steal it from somebody else. Like, where are they getting talent from? So it seems to be this blame shifting of
Yeah.
like we don't have a bottom of the market anymore. And somebody's like, said something about it's the ladder. And I'm like, yeah, but if you take the bottom rung out of a ladder, the ladder sucks. Like that's not how ladders work, right?
Yeah.
You need the first step. And
I
so like
can't
I
make
like as
go
CEO,
up.
how are you? Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You can't start at the top of a ladder.
uh,
So how are you thinking about it? Like,
Yeah, no, I agree. So to answer your question bluntly, we still hire juniors,
okay.
and all levels really. And one of the things that we haven't discussed here yet, and we're talking about AI a lot, and obviously when people say AI these days, they're usually talking about the large language models.
Hmm.
Um, Ultimately, what we like to say internally is right model for the job. And
Okay.
sometimes that's a large language model. Oftentimes it's not, right? Sometimes it's an XGBoost model. Sometimes it's a neural network. Use some of your more traditional machine learning type models, et cetera. They're good at certain things, right? And there's certain things that large language models are great at. But if you need to have a deterministic answer, meaning if I ask the same thing to a large language model 5 times and I have to get the same answer 5 times, then large language model is probably not the right choice for
Right.
that, right?
Yeah. No, 100%.
So yeah, there's the to me, I feel like I'm a little bit more optimistic, and I'm not certainly not of the nihilist view that the world is ending because of AI. I'm also not the opposite spectrum of AI is going to solve all of our problems and we don't have anything else here to worry about. That's probably just my Midwestern
I'm the same way.
persona coming out in me, but we're probably somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah. I mean, my concern is always the people talking about sort of end of the world, 80% unemployment are usually the people that are selling AI.
Yeah.
And it's like my belief is like that has to be true for them to justify the trillions of dollars you're spending. Right. Otherwise, if it's just like a marginal improvement, then this is the dumbest investment in the history of America.
Yeah.
Right. Like, why are we spending all this money if it's like a 5% improvement? It has to be dramatic for them to do. But then I talk to like a regular person, here in Chicago at Kraft or Allstate or Abbott, and like, yeah, AI is cool. We're
Yeah.
checking it out. We're looking at it. And it's like, well, I just heard on a podcast that AI is replacing everybody by the end of the year. And they're like, what? Like there's such a disconnect between the
Oh,
people
sure.
selling it and the people buying it. Not that it's not happening. It's just not happening at the pace that I think they wish it was happening.
Sure.
I would say apart from dev, like I think dev is
Yeah.
going violently fast, but like, I don't know anybody paying their bills with AI. Like
No.
accounting, like accounting is a trillion-dollar business around the world, and they ain't moving off their Z platform anytime soon, right?
Accounting is one of those things, but if you ask the question 10 times, you better get the answer right every
Exactly the
single
same
time.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I'm like, and then you look at the guys who are going to use AI, traders and models, like
Mhm.
they're going to build their own because they need
Yeah.
to move super fast. And so there is, I agree with you. I don't think AI is one thing. I think
Yeah.
people think of it as like, oh, I asked Anthropic for a cheesecake recipe and it was amazing. Like, cool, but that's not actually AI. That's just a
Yeah.
predictive model.
Yeah.
So, in the hiring world though, like you've been in security a long time, there is a fear right now of our industry. Like, is there a place for me? Should I leave security? There's obviously a pretty violent, reaction to AI slop and sort of, marketing and, sort of things like that. So just as an industry level, like if somebody's asking you for advice, like if some 22-year-old kid at DePaul who's graduating with a cybersecurity degree, what are you telling them? Like, what advice would you give them?
I mean, yeah, for cybersecurity specifically, I think there's certain areas that will be more affected than others. I mean, you mentioned dev, and along with dev comes AppSec, right? I feel like that general area, there's going to be a lot of AI in there. That doesn't mean
Mhm.
that we're not going to need AppSec people. We're not going to need developers. But maybe you can supplement a lot of their work with AI. There's other areas where it just makes less sense, or it's more difficult for certainly a large language model to do the type of work that needs to get done. I'm a firm believer of understanding, if you're going into cybersecurity or any development or tech in general, just understanding the computer science fundamentals, right, is
Mhm.
going to go a long ways, right? And heck, maybe you want to go into data science. I hear
Yeah.
that there's a future there right now. So, um,
It's yeah, probably better than cyber, right? Like
uh,
learn how to be I think one of Wade Wells, the guy we had on that show, was like he just thinks we're all going to become like data shepherds, basically, just like figuring out what data goes in what model at what time.
data engineers are the new
Data
plumbers,
engineer.
right?
Yeah, it's funny because I felt like that was sort of the secret society. People talk about ML, and you'd be like, oh, I'm not a data scientist. That's like confusing, and that's a
Yeah.
different animal. Some of the guys that you've hired are like hardcore data scientists, and I would always be like, I don't know, call somebody else that was like talented at it. But AI sort of makes you feel like you can do it, but I don't know how fake that is. Like it feels like it might be a little bit of a bait and switch of like I actually don't understand what's going on in the hood under some of these models, and so like I still need really smart data scientists. Maybe not as much vuln finders, right? Maybe to your point, maybe that's not the career to go into right now. Um, so, in that sense, like you're in a transition period in your company, right? Where you're sort of like raising a bunch of money and you're going to go to market. There's also sort of a problem in the market. It's like super, super noisy, right? Like
Oh,
it's really, really loud. So sort of like all of us in the industry side of it that are, not working at a Fortune 500, but are trying to sell it or deliver it are sort of looking around going like, we're overwhelmed, like what's working, whatever. So how are you thinking about sort of attacking the market then, like
that
to
is
get
a
attention,
very real
stand
and
out?
hard. Yeah, it's a very real and hard problem from a
Hmm.
company of our size as well. I mean, we were talking about before the podcast about Black Hat, right? So we
Hmm.
go and walk the Black Hat show floor, or worse, walk the RSA show floor, and then come back and tell me what all, thousands of these companies, what they actually do. There's
Hmm.
so much noise, and if you listen to what they're saying, they're all relative. I mean, they're all relatively saying about five different things, right?
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that they're actually direct competitors when you get down
Right.
under the hood and understand what it is that they do, but because the noise and the marketing machines behind them, you would almost think that. I feel for practitioners now. Used to be one a long time ago, and I can't imagine, trying to figure out what all of these companies do and how that relates to my problems on a day-to-day basis. It's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, historically, it's like, oh, you go check out talk to an analyst or something like that. I think analysts, that feels like a job where AI might be pounding on their
Right.
door, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. Maybe in the future, I'm going to ask Claude what this company actually does. But it's a very real problem.
I did that the other day for a friend of mine who has a startup, and the answers between the models could not have been more different, could not have
Yeah.
been more wrong.
Yeah.
One of them thought it was a product feature of like another company. Like even asking AI, it's like you to your point about getting the same answer twice in a row. I actually like corrected the AI. I'm like, this isn't the company I'm asking. Oh yeah, but like
Oh, I'm
it
sorry, I actually told you.
authoritatively told me it was this company, and I was like, you're wrong. I know it's not that company. So like yeah, even asking AI is sort of a crapshoot right now for
Sure.
sure. Um, but you were a CISO, right? And I think
It's
it.
no, it's been a number of years, so I
But I
have
remember being in your office at
mm,
Orbit slinging some bullshit, I think at NeoHapsis or something like that
uh,
about something we were doing. Like, you've been sold to your whole career basically, right? Um, how are you thinking about audience? Like if you think about like you're a CISO at a mid-sized fintech company or whatever, and you're looking at this chaos, like how are you thinking about how you're going to stand out in that world?
yeah.
Like how do you bring enough value that they can't deny that you're important?
Yeah, for us, it's try to be as clear as possible the exact problem that we're solving, and everyone's going to talk about, and I'm sure we're guilty of this to a certain extent. Of if you look at our website, yeah, we're talking about the models and stuff that we built, but ultimately, you got to get down to what is the pain point that you're solving, and how are you making that pain point go away. So that's becomes more clear as to what you do. Now, how you get in front of that CISO who's never heard of you, that's an altogether different problem. That's part of our fundraising, to be honest.
Right.
Um, but being able to go out and so that everybody be clear about what you do, and then try to get in front of as many people as possible, and understand. I mean, from a practitioner standpoint, and I've been there. It's like there are people that either don't have your pain point, or it's just not in their top 5 lists this year, right? So
Mhm.
that's
It's fine.
that's fine. There should
Mhm.
be, if you're building something that matters, there's going to be enough people out there that are going to have it that you can worry about them later, right? When they do have that pain point, or maybe they never do.
Yeah, and you get in this mode where, you know, you chase every deal. You always the no's hurt so bad when you're a startup. You were like no's are actually incredibly powerful
I love it.
in sales, right?
I love a fast no.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, and this is one of the things that actually pains me about the Midwest specifically. But obviously, a yes is my favorite answer, but a fast no is my second favorite answer. The worst is the perpetual maybe, right? That just goes on
Yeah,
forever, dragging out resources. You're spending time and money and
right.
all this, and you're never actually getting anywhere. They're just kind of, they're being too polite. They don't want to hurt your feelings, and little do they know that I've had my feelings hurt so many times that that it doesn't hurt anymore.
You almost prefer it,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Where I grew up, we call it the Midwestern goodbye, where they just
yeah,
won't leave and you just keep going. It's interesting. 'Cause I was thinking about this and thinking about talking to you today because Chicago's a great town, right? With tons of big companies, but there's been almost no startups. Like it's very, very low for the size of town we are. Obviously nothing's going to compare to Silicon Valley, but when you look at the rest of the company, it's like Austin has a gravity,
mhm,
more not security, but like there's a bunch of startups there. New York has this now sort of Israeli pipeline into New York, and we're still sitting in Chicago with like almost no startups.
mhm,
And I think part of the reason, right, is the companies that we have here aren't particularly adventurous, right? They aren't particularly willing to look at startups. Um, you know, there are times, a Walgreens was, or a you were when you were like there are companies that come through that sort of are more brave. But like, we also have a lot of shops that are IT outsourced, so they're even less innovative, right? But
mhm,
like, I think it's really hurt Chicago as like a safe choice town, right? It's a hard place to sell. Um, but I also think there's this gravity now, which I don't know how we're going to solve it, which is large companies making safe choices because the big guys are so big, right? If
yeah,
you think about the gravity of Microsoft, the gravity of Google, you'll talk to these shops and they're like, yeah, we would look at you, but we just did a 10-year deal with Google to move everything to GCP and buy all of Google's products, or obviously you just all fine with, E5s of Microsoft. It's like,
yeah,
there's no room at the trough for startups. And I think that's particularly poisonous to our industry. But like, are you seeing that? Like when you go to play again, you're not in a space where there's a ton of big companies competing with you. I don't think there's a lot of like
yeah.
vuln solutions for Microsoft. But like as an industry, like I see these guys like, oh, I'm going to spend $180 million building an endpoint company. I'm like, and compete against Defender.
Yeah.
Okay, like maybe you'll win, but like that's a tough, especially now Microsoft's kicking everybody out of the kernel, and it's like, what are you gonna do? So like you look at the landscape and you're like, there's these behemoths that are bigger and scarier than they've ever been. Like we used to make fun of Microsoft in the early 2000s, like they were this juggernaut, but not what they're compared to now.
Yeah.
Where do you think startups fit in that? We have 4,000 startups in cybersecurity, funded startups. Like where are they gonna go if
Wow, I
Microsoft
thought
and
there
Google
was
take
more.
all the action?
That's amazing.
I've heard 4,000 funded, so
Yeah.
maybe that's
Oh,
wrong.
I'm kidding. It's so the way I think about it is it's always been a bit of a pendulum, right? There's always been
Mhm.
that uh, there's a group that it will either go after best of breed and they want to get the best of everything and they're super mature and I don't really care that I've got 100 different vendors that are doing this for me. I get the 100 best vendors in my eyes.
Right.
And then the pendulum swings and everybody wants to consolidate, save money, and I'm going to throw everything at Google, Microsoft, the old adage of I never got fired for buying IBM,
Mhm.
only modern day version of it, right? And I think there's certain companies that always stay on one side or the other of that pendulum,
Mhm.
and then the rest are swaying in between.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
We saw that a lot. I felt like after the whole COVID thing, we started to see people start moving towards, the platform companies, right?
Right, right.
Palo Alto's going to solve all of my security issues for me, and I'm not going to worry about that. I think we're starting to see that pendulum swing back a little bit, and maybe I'm biased because I'm small, where best of breed is certainly the case. But I think if you're a startup, you're obviously you're playing in the best of breed realm. You're not going to compete against the huge platforms
Right. Yeah.
for things like you just mentioned, right? So you go out and you find those companies, those industries that tend to stay in best of breed, and that's your wedge. That's where you start, right? You can
Right.
expand later as time goes on, but I want to find those security programs that they don't care about paying one bill to one vendor. They want to make sure that they're getting the best of everything and have the most mature program out there.
Yeah. I was talking to another founder the other day, and I was like, Copilot's the best thing that ever happened to our industry. It just showed the flaw of all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Like, not shitting on Microsoft. Like they're great at some things they do, but that was a real oversell, right? Where
Yeah.
they were like, just throw it in your sock and it'll answer all your questions. And it was like, it just didn't work and it didn't have enough context. And, you're just as slow. And so like people kind of saw the magic of like Claude or of Gemini on its own. And so it's sort of, I think, open, like, it's hard to corner the AI market, right? And then you have obviously all of these companies that are starting to layer AI into their solutions.
Mhm.
It's funny, even like we're recording this on a podcast piece of software, and even that, like the AI has gotten so good. It'll
Yeah.
edit everything for you, and it'll like noise, EQ everything for you. It's incredibly good, and it's like, well, now I don't need to buy Adobe stuff. Like it does it all for me. So like it is
Yeah.
always changing, and I think AI is the biggest tidal wave I've seen in my career,
Mhm.
even beyond, the first web that, 1.0 stuff that we were both in Chicago for and,
Yeah.
that early stuff. And then, kind of flowing into mobile and cloud. So I do think this is the biggest, scariest wave of my life. And it's coming. You better start paddling is kind of what I've been telling a bunch of my customer friends. But, in that kind of, you know, changes, the only constant is change. I still worry about the gravity of the models, like, and the greed of that, of like, I ate the whole internet and now it's all mine. And like, you got to build on top of me. And, so I think it's really, really cool that you guys do your own models. I think it's really cool that you aren't just built atop of LLMs. So like, what do you, just cause I think people are curious about it. Like, I'm a security person. I am looking at the products up there. I go, I can build my own or some version of it. Like, talk to me about the models. Like,
Yeah.
should you download one? How do you train it? Like, what's your advice there on how to get good at that part of it?
Yeah, so for us, we don't run. It's great actually. We used to when I was at Kenna, we'd run into build or buy quite a bit, especially
Yeah.
we were talking about the difference, the Midwest versus the East Coast and West Coast. And West Coast was usually a build or buy with a lot of build and a little bit of
Mhm.
buy. East Coast, not so much, a lot more build, or excuse me, buy than build.
Right.
And we already talked about the Midwest. I think for us at Empirical, actually, we fit really well into a build or buy situation,
Mhm.
honestly, because ultimately, what you're going to do is you're going to need the data, which we
Mhm.
have, right? So you either got to go out and buy that data, acquire that data somehow, and then train a model on, and then you got to train those models, right? So you need a team of data scientists. One of the things that we tend to find in a lot of these organizations these days, even though really mature, large orgs that used to sometimes have access to some security data scientists, oftentimes don't anymore, right? Those people have become deployed into, the money making areas of the org now because it's just much more
Yes.
lucrative over there,
Yeah, 100%.
which so them being able to train their own models is usually and again, unless I'm trying to sell into like a Microsoft, a Google, or an Amazon or
Mhm.
somebody like that, it's just not very common. So we can accommodate both a build or a buy situation, whether you need the data or you need the model or you need both. Um, that said, if where should somebody start? Well, obviously, one is starting with the pain point that you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
I mentioned this before, but right model for the job. We find like an XGBoost model is really good at doing certain predictions, right? But a large language model is terrible at that. A neural network model might tell you something different. We've got something we call a Shapley coefficient model, which actually the number one thing we use that for is to explain what the model just did.
Okay.
So you don't want to design something that ends up being a black box where it's just a, hey, trust us, this is important or this isn't.
Right.
So it actually will analyze it and look at it and say, okay, well, this is important because of X, Y, and Z, or not important because of A, B, and C, right? So it's basically explaining what it's doing as it's doing it. So there's a lot to that goes into it. It's not a trivial, hey, I just hired a junior data scientist and data engineer. Let's see how we can go solve security now.
Right.
Um,
If
there's
only it was that easy, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But I would suggest starting with something small, right, on the
Yeah.
team, whatever it is that you want to do in the specific area that you want to do it in. Obviously, the access to a lot of these public models now, and there's a lot of open weight models and different things that you can do. There's a lot you can do very well, very efficiently on the cheap, right?
Mhm.
And it's a great way to start. I think most orgs are certainly using some form of AI now, just in their coding alone. How can I take the next step and start to understand, well, what's that code doing? Are we introducing more vulnerabilities to it? Please explain this code to me. Right? We use a
Right.
large language model code or a large language model that will actually kind of explain some of a repo when we're trying to identify whether or not that code is actually exploit code or not, right? And so that's step one, and then we'll feed it into another model that's going to do some labeling and different things like that, and then ultimately make a prediction as to how likely one this is to be exploit code, but how likely it is to actually be functioning exploit code as well. So there's just
It's a
so
lot
much.
of forks in
Yeah.
the road, man. Yeah. So, um, in that sense, like what you guys are doing at your shop and everything like that. So if I'm a program manager or a vuln manager or somebody who's involved in vuln management at a big company, or a
Yeah.
company that cares about it, I guess maybe not always big. If I'm trying to build, if I'm trying to come up with ways to use AI creatively in the dev process, because dev does feel like it's moving the fastest, so it feels like a natural gravity to go
Yeah.
work at it. Like they call you, you help. Like, is that the pitch? Like like you have a lot of data, you can help them build data, intertwine it together. Because like you just mentioned 12 forks in the road, right? Which is like,
Mhm.
what does this code do? How do I remediate it? All these different things. How exploitable is it? Is it exploit in the wild? Because like just a piece of AI internally saying this code is vulnerable. Okay, like we've had this for 20 years. So what? Like,
Yeah.
is there an exploit in the wild? Is it something that I give? Is it a module in Metasploit or whatever, right? And so, obviously, as AI gets weaponized, it gets scarier. Is that where you fit in the market? Is that the time they should call you?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately for us, though, it gets back to that problem to be solved, right? The biggest problem that we solve is, look, you already know you have too many vulnerabilities. You can't possibly fix them all. So what do I do next, right?
Yeah,
And that's where we come in.
awesome.
So,
So, I know you have to get going and spend your 25 million somehow. I appreciate you so much. Where can they find Empirical? Like, what's your site?
Absolutely.
Give me a plug here.
www.empiricalsecurity.com. Super easy to find.
.com. All right, Empirical Security. You're on LinkedIn.
I am.
Obviously, you love to talk to AppSec people and Rome people and things like that. I always say, please don't pitch slap you. Just connect with you and ask you for a job or something like that. You're going to be at Black Hat. You guys have a booth at Black Hat?
We do not have a booth. We will be there. We're hosting a few events and things like that, but by all means, reach out and connect.
Yeah, everybody give Ed a follow. He's a great follow on LinkedIn and a great resource for AI. I'm just trying to learn. Everybody's trying to learn. So this is great. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you and all the best to you and the team. I love the guys that you are working with again, and I love to see you guys out back in the wild doing startup-y stuff. And I just am so excited to see what you build. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, awesome. Thanks.